She walked out of the New Mexico desert like a ghost, Apache woman alone, starving after 5 days without food or water. Every rancher in the territory would have sent her away, called her a threat, maybe worse. But when she stopped at the fence line and spoke, her words weren't begging or pleading. "I'm asking for work, not pity," she said, her voice steady despite trembling legs, her spine straight despite obvious starvation. Those 8 words shattered everything Grayson Mitchell thought he knew about pride, dignity, and survival, because she'd walked through hell not just to survive, but to survive as herself, refusing charity that demanded she abandon her identity, choosing grueling labor over comfortable erasure. What happened next would force him to confront an uncomfortable truth, that preserving who you are sometimes matters more than preserving your body, and that real strength looks nothing like what society taught him to expect. Grayson Mitchell leaned against the corral fence of the Double M Ranch, watching dust devils dance across the New Mexico desert. At 28, he'd spent a decade working cattle in territory caught between civilization and wilderness. "Rider coming!" called Silas, the ranch foreman, pointing toward a figure approaching on foot from the eastern hills. As the figure drew closer, Grayson realized it was a woman, Apache by her traditional dress. She carried a small bundle and walked with spine straight despite obvious exhaustion. "Get your rifle," Silas muttered. "Could be a trick." "She's alone and on foot. Doesn't look like the advance guard of anything except hunger." The woman stopped 20 yards from the ranch house, close enough to speak but far enough to show she understood boundaries. Her face was gaunt, her dress worn, but her eyes held fierce pride. "I come to ask for work," she said in heavily accented but clear English. Her voice carried no pleading, just firm statement of purpose. Silas laughed bitterly. "We don't hire Apache women. Go to the mission if you need charity." "I did not ask for charity. I asked for work. I can clean, cook, mend, tend animals. I will earn my keep." "Where's your family?" Grayson asked. "Scattered. When the army relocated us to San Carlos, many died. Others fled. I stayed too long caring for my grandmother. When she died, the rations had stopped. I walked for 5 days to reach this valley. 5 days without food across desert terrain." Grayson felt something twist in his chest. "The mission in Socorro will feed you," he said. "They have programs that require I abandon who I am," she interrupted. "Programs that demand I become something I am not in exchange for scraps. I am Apache. I will remain Apache. But I'm also starving. I'm asking for work, not pity, not conversion, not charity that comes with chains." Silas stepped forward, his face hard. "We've lost cattle to Apache raids. We've buried friends killed in ambushes. You expect us to just welcome you?" "I expect nothing. I ask for opportunity to work. To earn food and shelter through labor. If you cannot see difference between asking for work and begging for handouts, then I have wasted my walk." She turned to leave, movements dignified despite visible trembling from exhaustion. "Wait," Grayson heard himself say. "What's your name?" The woman turned back. "My Apache name you could not pronounce. The missionaries called me Mary. I prefer my own name, but I will answer to Mary if it gets me work." "Mary," Grayson said, "we have a bunkhouse that needs cleaning. There's laundry piled up. Garden needs tending. If you do those jobs, you eat what we eat and sleep under a roof." "Grayson, this is insane," Silas began. "It's my ranch. I make the decisions." Mary studied him for a long moment. "I will work. I will earn my place. I will not accept pity or charity. These are my terms." "Those are my terms too. You work, you eat. Fair trade." She nodded once, then walked toward the bunkhouse. No thank you. No gratitude, just acceptance of an arrangement that preserved her dignity. After she'd gone, Silas turned to Grayson. "You're going to regret this. She's Apache. They're not like us? Maybe. Or maybe we're not so different as we'd like to think. Over following days, Grayson watched Mary work with dedication that put most hired hands to shame. She cleaned the bunkhouse until it gleamed. She repaired clothes with invisible stitches. She tended the garden with knowledge that transformed it. But it was the small things that broke down his preconceptions. The way she sang softly in Apache while working, not hiding her culture, but maintaining it proudly. The way she refused any food she hadn't earned, even when offered extra. The way she held herself with dignity no hardship could diminish. One evening, Grayson found her repairing a traditional Apache basket outside the bunkhouse. "That's beautiful work," he said, sitting nearby. "My grandmother taught me. She said our baskets carry our history, our prayers, our identity. When I repair this, I repair connection to who I am." "Is that why you refused the mission?" Mary's hands paused. "The mission would feed my body while starving my spirit. They would say, 'We will help you, but first you must become like us. Stop speaking your language. Stop your songs. Stop being Apache.' They call it charity, but it is erasure, disguised as kindness." Grayson felt shame rising. He'd always thought missions were benevolent, never considering what they demanded in return. When you asked for work instead of charity, you were protecting something more important than your stomach. "Yes," my grandmother told me, "they can take our land, scatter our families, starve our bodies, but they cannot take who we are unless we surrender it. Accepting pity means surrendering. Earning my place means keeping my soul." The words hit Grayson like a physical blow. He'd seen her as desperate, assumed she had no choice, but she'd chosen the harder path deliberately, all to preserve something he'd never had to fight for. "I'm sorry," Grayson said, "for assuming, for thinking you were just desperate. I am desperate. Desperate to survive, but more desperate to survive as myself. Desperation does not require abandoning dignity. Sometimes it requires fighting harder to keep it." 3 weeks later, Cooper Hayes, a neighboring rancher, rode up with 2 hands. "Heard you're harboring an Apache. That true?" "I'm employing a worker. She earns her keep, same as anyone." "She's a savage. My brother died in an Apache raid. You're betraying every settler who's lost someone." Mary emerged from the house, arms full of linens. She stopped when she saw the visitors. "Living in comfort while good people struggle," Cooper spat. "I work for my comfort," Mary said quietly. "I earn every meal. I ask for nothing I do not pay for with labor. You shouldn't be here at all." Mary set down the linens carefully. "My people fought to protect our land, our families, our way of life. Just as your people would fight if someone came to take your ranch. The difference is you call your violence defending property and our violence savagery. But the love behind it is the same." "I lost family too," she continued. "My father died fighting soldiers. My mother died on the long walk. My grandmother starved on the reservation. I understand grief and hatred, but I refuse to let either define me." She picked up the linens. "I did not come asking you to forget your brother. I came asking for work, for the dignity of earning my survival, rather than accepting pity. If that offends you, then your grief has made you cruel." Cooper's face flushed. "Grayson, if you keep her here, you're choosing sides." "Then I'm choosing wrong," Grayson said, stepping between them, "because I've watched her work harder than any hand I've employed. I've watched her maintain dignity when most would have broken, and I've learned that maybe the sides we've drawn are less clear than we want to believe." After Cooper left, Mary turned to Grayson. "You risk much for someone you barely know. You risked more, walking for 5 days, asking for work instead of accepting easier charity. Keeping your identity when surrendering it would have been safer. That courage deserves respect." For the first time, Mary's fierce expression softened. "You begin to understand." Months passed. Mary's presence became accepted, though not universally welcomed. Some neighbors avoided the ranch, but others, watching her work ethic and quiet dignity, began questioning their prejudices. One evening, Grayson found Mary teaching his young nephew traditional basket weaving. "My grandmother said baskets are like people," Mary told the child. "Each strand is different, different color, thickness, source, but woven together with patience and respect, they create something strong and beautiful. Alone, one strand breaks easily. Together they hold water, carry food, last for generations." Grayson watched his nephew's face light up. This was what Mary had fought for. Not just survival, but the right to pass on her culture, her wisdom, her identity. Later, as they sat watching stars emerge, Mary spoke quietly. "When I first arrived, I saw hatred in your face. Taught hatred, but hatred nonetheless. I was wrong. You were taught wrong. There is difference." She paused. "You gave me work when you wanted to give charity. That was the moment I knew you might understand. Charity says, 'I am above you.' Work says, 'We are equal.'" "Your words broke my heart that first day," Grayson admitted. "I'm asking for work, not pity. I realized I'd never had to fight for the right to earn my dignity. I was just born with it acknowledged. You had to demand it every single day." Mary nodded. "My culture teaches that every person carries their own sacred fire. Poverty, displacement, hardship. These threaten the fire but cannot extinguish it unless we let them. When I asked for work instead of pity, I was protecting my fire. When you offered work instead of charity, you acknowledged my fire as equal to yours." Grayson thought about Cooper Hayes, about easy prejudices he'd carried for 28 years. Mary's presence hadn't made his life easier, but it had made him confront truths about dignity and respect that comfort had let him ignore. "I've learned more from employing you than I learned in a lifetime before. And I have learned that not all Bilagana are the same. Some are willing to see past what they were taught." She smiled slightly. "Though it helps that I would not let you pity me. Sometimes refusing to accept how others diminish us is the only way to make them see us truly." The ranch continued its rhythms, but something fundamental had shifted. Mary remained Apache, proud and uncompromising. Grayson remained a rancher, rooted in his culture. But between them existed something new, a bridge built through mutual recognition that dignity and respect transcended cultural boundaries. Her words that first day had broken his heart because they revealed how thoroughly he'd been taught to see an entire people as less than human. She'd demanded he see her truly, and in doing so had forced him to see himself more clearly. The Apache woman who walked out of the desert asking for work had sought only to preserve her identity while surviving. She'd found something more, proof that cultural pride and dignity weren't obstacles to cooperation, but foundations for it. That true respect meant honoring differences rather than demanding their erasure, and she'd taught a cowboy that having your heart broken open was sometimes the only way to see what you'd been missing all along.